Okay, so purchase ordering. This will appear under the purchasing module, so there is a dedicated module within RentalResult to cover off the whole of the purchasing cycle. So you've got a standalone purchase order feature, you've got a standalone re-rent purchase order feature. However, you can link what we call back-to-backs, so you can create an internal purchase order and then link it to a back-to-back, and I'll talk about that in a little while. You've got purchase requisitions. There is a purchase control center. The purchase control center is essentially where you can queue up requisitions for stock inventory. So a good example of that is in item maintenance, you can set min-max stock values for your products. So if I want 100 of something, and when I get down to my last 20, I want to kick off a requisition. The system can have what we call automatic stock replenishment. It's a feature which looks at the inventory value, so as things are being counted out of inventory, it's calculated in the background and triggering when to throw off a requisition. So that's a feature which will appear in the purchase control center, and then you can approve those requisitions through an approval workflow. They'll then become purchase orders, and then you can complete those and send them on to your vendors. We've then got the goods in from purchase order feature. So it does what it says on the tin, create a purchase order in the system. You approve it, you convert it, you send it to the vendor sends you a receipt, and then you can goods in the products inbound into RentalResult from that goods receipt. You could do correct good receipt function as well. So if you made a mistake, dates, rates, quantities, you can do a correction within the system as well. We've then got returns, where you can do returns basically. We've got preferred vendor section as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that as I go through the PO section. So preferred vendors essentially means you can link up with your most commonly used vendors in the system. So from a procurement standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, and I'll talk about that when I actually run through the purchase order. And you can do a goods in import into the system as well. So you can do goods in en masse. So I'm just going to open up the purchase order function. So for anyone that's watching this video, purchase orders are created between your company and your vendor, your supplier, to arrange for delivery of goods or services. The type of purchase order is determined by the transaction settings. Okay, so everything that you see in this demonstration is configured. I've configured that in my demo system, and you've got workflows available to you. So kind of going more into the weeds of the configuration and the setup, which is kind of more on a, if you're looking to implement or improve your purchase ordering, it's something I would recommend you kind of spend some time with a dedicated BA, someone who's expert in the setup on this. But essentially, you create a purchase order against an account, so a vendor account. So you can see there I've got the option to free type. I can do a lookup like you can in any part of the system. And I can also select from preferred vendors for those accounts as well. So we can set preferred vendors up by the account or project. We can also set preferred vendors up by the item code as well. So I can just put in there something like EC35 for my mini excavators and see if I've got a preferred vendor in the system for that particular item type. Okay, so you've got those options as well. Or I can free type, so I know the vendor that I want to raise the purchase order against. I can do that. There's a little inquiry button here as well. So if you click on the little inquiry button, it's going to go away and do a account lookup, so I can actually look at the vendor that I'm transacting with, and it'll give me the contractual information via an account inquiry. So I can see there I've got the current vendor status, so we're not on hold, we haven't got any problems, it's active, we're in green. The type of account we've got with that vendor, which is credit, and the current hold for credit status is set to normal. So everything looks good. You can do all the other relevant pieces of kind of lookup that you want to do. So you can look at, let's say I want to look at my contractual information that I've got with this vendor. So what are my payment terms? So I have to pay these people on a 28-day invoicing cycle, and then we've got a templated billing set up as well for these people as well. So you can do some things right off the bat within the purchase order feature. And then we come down to the more transactional side. So this is where you would set that up in transaction maintenance. So transaction type, telling the system what it is that we're creating a purchase order for. So am I creating a purchase order for parts, for workshop? Am I doing a purchase order to buy new equipment? And on those individual transactions, you can set individual rules. You can actually determine what can be purchased on those type of transactions. So you can actually restrict what can be done, and then really sort of focus in on what transactions you want. So I've got absolutely tons in there. You may only have one or two different transactions depending on your business type. So it's really, this is where you're kind of building up your profile for your business. So it's not a one-trick pony. It's not just here's a purchase order module and RentalResult. It does this, and that's it. There are different building blocks that you can apply in the transactional setup to work for your business's workflow, because not everyone works in the same way, and that's why sometimes we find it difficult with documentation in standard system, because not everyone does purchasing in the same way. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the button for PO for new equipment. You can also see we've got a purchase order type. So actually I can say I'm not ready to create a purchase order right now. I want to do it as a quote. And then what you can do with the quote stage, again, this is switched on in the transactional settings, but unlike rental and sales, the quote number actually becomes the PO number. So when you hit the OK button there, it's going to go and create a quote number. That quote number will be the same number as the PO. So when you convert it, those numbers will stay the same. So if you did the same with a sales contract or a rental contract, it's different. You get a different number, and then when it's converted, it will change to sales contract number or a purchase order number. And I'll give you a little example why it's done this way in purchasing. So a lot of people in construction behave retrospectively. Okay, so we have really good relationships with our vendors, and they do a lot of good stuff for us. We call them up. Hey, can you drop this off? And guess what? They go drop it off. And then you've got to give them a PO afterwards. So this way we can actually do it as a quote and generate the number to give to the supplier to actually deliver something, but then deal with the detail afterwards. So what do they give us? What is the quantity? What is the price? We can then update that quote, convert it, send it around the approval workflow. And we don't then need to change the numbers or issue emergency POs or anything like that. So there's a little bit of fluidity around the way that works. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a standard purchase order. Okay. So a couple of things to know on the main summary page is you've got options there to put your reference numbers in. So if you've been given a quote reference number from a vendor or some reference from the project that you want to be able to report and reference back to, you can use those fields for that. Sales reps as well. So sales and purchasing, you may have a sales team that's responsible for those. With the sales side of things, you may be commissioning those sales reps. They may earn commission on things that they sell. You can then link your sales reps using that feature. So it's a competency you would add against the operator profile for them to appear in the list then as a sales rep that you can apply to the sales order or the PO. Blanket PO amounts, I love this one. So if you didn't want to keep creating hundreds of different purchase orders for the same vendor, you could have a blanket PO. So what I mean by that is you can set up a PO for say $10,000, and then you can keep adding mobilizations or extra lines to this purchase order and draw down from that value. So as a business unit, if you say I've got an annual budget with this vendor of $10,000, then set one purchase order up for $10,000 and then just keep adding lines to it until you've used all of that remaining balance. Then as you come across, so when you add your vendor details in, just like most places in the system, it will pre-populate with all of the master data that's in there. So you shouldn't have to touch the vendor tab. You shouldn't have to touch the billing tab. All of that detail should be pulling in from the master vendor account. And the same with the shipping tab. So you can almost navigate straight to the product tab, okay? And then in there, we just do the normal thing that you do with any sales or rental contract is you would go in and you would create your lines. So I'm going to go ahead and create a line for one of my mini excavators. So one of the good things that we can do in the system as well is we can determine what it is that we're buying. So you can set up vendor part numbers in the system and link them to your purchase order. So that means you don't have to have many different item codes for the same piece of equipment. So I can have one item code for a mini excavator, and then I can have loads of different vendor manufacturers and serial numbers. So you can then just determine that on the purchase order. Then on the document print, when you create your quote or your PO, you stipulate that to your vendor, and they can see in the notes of the PO, I want this mini excavator, and it's this make and it's this model. So you've got the feature in there to do that as well. Then the usual stuff is just you'd apply a price, and so you can see I haven't touched the price and it's automatically pulled it in. It's because I've got vendor price lists set up in the system, so it's automatically looking at the account, it's looking at the item code, and it's saying, you've got this price list item set for $46,500. So I have an agreement with this vendor for $46,500. So then the rest is just the usual stuff. When's it required? Is it linked to an existing purchase order number or sales order number? And you just go through those usual pieces, okay? So what you're going to see here is I've now got a value of 46,500. If I go back to my summary tab, you can see my blanket PO is now gone into arrears, and you can set up some workflow in there to restrict some of that. But just to show you that, the system will also calculate negative values as well, and you can report out on that. Okay, other things you can do. So if you're buying something over a period of time, then you can set those up, and you can say, look, this is I'm buying this on finance. I'm going to pay for this thing over the next year, and this is the percentage of the overall value that I'm going to pay each period, so each monthly period. And you can set that up in the system. You can also link purchase orders to projects as well. So if it's a job site purchase, so they're buying an excavator or a drill or something, you can link it through to projects also. Okay, let's talk a little bit about preferred vendors now quickly, because there's a direct link between preferred vendors and purchase ordering. And coming from a procurement background, I strongly advise, this is a feature that anyone looks at. It essentially means you can create vendor accounts into RentalResult, and you can manage them against not only accounts and projects, but also item codes specifically as well. So this is a really good feature. If you're interested in procurement, and you've got strong procurement background within your business, then this is definitely the feature for you. So very, very quick example. I have a preferred vendor that provides me goods for a specific niche. So let's say excavators. And I don't want to deviate away from that vendor. I want to use that vendor. They give me the best rates. They give me the best service. I would lock into an agreement with that vendor, and I would say, yep, let's lock these rates in for 24 months, and I'm going to put a no letdown policy in place, which means I'm going to channel all of my purchasing through to you. If you can't supply, it's your problem. You go and find it, and you go and sub-rent it from somewhere else, not me. Okay, so that's the type of agreement that I would have put in place with vendors in a previous life before I was here at Win. And then what I would do is I would use the functionality within Win to manage that. So I've got preferred vendors, I've got price lists set up for those preferred vendors for those item codes, and I manage those on a 24-month cycle. Okay, so just to give you an example, I'm going to look at an item code for my mini excavators. So I can set up in the system, do a search, and I can see that I have got 6 vendors on my books which can provide those type of excavators to me. Okay, and then you can see you've got different options in which you can toggle on and off as well. So you can see I've got one of those that is purely active. These other ones I've inactivated those. So this one is purely activated. So if I double click into that, Atlanta State and Stone Supplies, they are classed as a preferred vendor. They're classed as a re-rent vendor, so I'll rent equipment from them as well, but I will also purchase equipment from them too. So you can come in, you can set up as many as you like, and as time goes on, if you do a deal with someone else, get a better rate, get a better service, you know, things happen, things change as things move on, new vendors come onto the market, etc. You can activate and inactivate them, so you don't have to keep you know, a running list of many active vendors. You can actually inactivate them, so it's quite dynamic in that respect. You've also got this auto replenishment button here as well. So again, as I mentioned before at the start of the video, if you're using the system for minimum and maximum stock control, so this is purely where, you know, I've got these 10 items that fly off the shelf. I'm fed up of running out of them all the time before we reorder. You can set the measurements up in the system to flag up and create a requisition to come to you to say, hey, you know, I've got room for 100 of these on the shelf. I'm down to my last 20. It's time to start reordering, and then by the time you've done the requisition, approval, purchase order, delivery, logistics cycle to get them back in, you know, to the yard, you've still got a contingency of 20 on the shelf before that next shipment actually physically arrives. So we tick that button there to say this is a preferred vendor for this product type. So when we turn on the auto stock replenishment feature, it knows and it recognizes this item code belongs to this vendor. Okay, so a really powerful part of the system if you want to use it, and it's intrinsically linked to the purchase ordering function. Right, let's talk a little bit about approvals then. Okay, so with most purchasing functions in the system, whether it's sales, whether it's purchasing, or whether it's rental, you can have what we call role-based approvals, and that can be based on a hierarchy or it can be based on value. So there is a role-based approvals module within RentalResult, and you can actually set up and create purchase approvals. So you can see there, you can set them up for purchasing, for sales discounts, and for work order discounts in this particular area. And you can see the roles. So these roles would need to be created in the system, and then you give them rules. Okay, so for instance, I can look at my PO management role, and this one is for purchase order approvals for purchase orders against contracts. Okay, so this particular role has a value from $0 up to $10,000. So if I have this role, and I would need to have this set up against my operator profile. So if I just back out of here for a second and go into operators, operator maintenance. So this place here where you set if you're a super user. If you go to the roles tab, you would need to apply the role of PO management. Okay. So if you have that role applied to your operator maintenance account, you are part of this role-based approvals, and you have an approval limit up to $10,000. Okay, so then if you wanted to put the next hierarchical role in place, let's say project manager approver, that project manager has approval value from $10,001 up to $24,999, and then you can go up to senior, and you can have $25,000 up to $49,999. So you can keep going. You can then add another role for director that has the ability to approve from $50,000 up to 100, and then 101,000 all the way up. So you can create different hierarchies, different rules, and then you can apply them. So there's a little bit of configuration involved there. Again, it's normally something that you would need to sit down and carefully map out. But once that's all configured and set up, you can then see the building blocks. So then when you create a purchase order for a specific value against an account, you will then look, because based on your operator role profile, you are assigned to these accounts and you have this specific role for PO management. So when you create a purchase order for that one of those accounts for a specific value, it will follow the rules that you're setting up in the system based on this role-based structure. Okay. So then it will come through to you, and the way it will come through to you is we have templates. So you would then set up in your purchase ledger template area of the system. You can see that you have some standard email templates. Okay, so for instance, we've got PO approved, PO declined, one that's coming through as a requisition for a to be signed off. There's many different ones that you can apply in the system, so you would just need to apply the right one, and then you would just need to tell them. So like this one, new purchase wrong one. Let's just go back a sec. Purchase. I'm going to go down and have a look at new purchase requisition created. So you would set yourself up a default message. You can set this up to say send emails, and then you can determine who you want to send that email to. So you can send it to branch manager and then copy in the user that sent it, etc. You can create those up and create those rules. And then what that should do, when you have an order that needs to be approved, it will send it through, and you will have a little bit of text. Here's what it is that you're approving, and then at the bottom you'd have a approve button and a reject button, and then depending on which button of those you press, it will flow on to the next stage. Okay, so you can start to see a little bit how the building blocks are set up. But in terms of a module, you want to work through your transaction. You want to work through your approvals, and you want to make sure you've got the right people set up for your approvals, and you want to make sure that you've got the the capacity to be able to workflow that into existing business process. So if you've got those roles and those rules configured in the system, another way of being able to manage those is in the vendor order approval module, which is available under the billing/approvals drop down on the top of the screen. So you can go to approvals, and you've got all of these options available to you for your approvals. So the vendor order approval tab it's a great little tab actually, because it will essentially show everything that's awaiting my approval. So if you're logged in as a core system user and you've got those credentials set up against your roles in the operator maintenance and everything set up properly, then it will flow through into here, and you'll be able to see a queue of all of your documents that are pending your approval. So I've got 2 in my queue at the moment. I've got the date, I've got the document ID, I've got the value of those POs, I've got the vendor that we need to approve it for, the specific project or account that this PO is for, and it tells you who the next approver is and who it was entered by. So I can see just by clicking on it down the bottom here, it tells me what the product is. So we want to purchase a hammer drill. It's a quantity of 1 for $750, and then we've got some access to be able to see where the GL string is posting that cost to, so we can, depending on what your GL structure is, you can also bring that information in. So I've got some buttons down the bottom, nice and easy. Do I approve it? Yes. Do I decline it? If I want to request some information, I can open that up, and it will tell me, it will actually pop me up, and I can actually email the person that's sent the requisition in, or create the purchase order, and I can say, hey, what's this for? And then you can interact backwards and forwards in there. You can also review it, so I can do basically it's going to bring up document movements inquiry, so I can take a look at the purchase order and then I can preview it. There I can get to the information that says, hey, it's awaiting approval. There's some, you can drill down into there and look a little bit further, similar to what you would in other parts of the system where you can get to doc movements inquiries. Or I can reroute it to say, hey, I don't think this is me that should be approving it. And when you do that lookup, so again, based on your hierarchy that you've set up and those people that have those roles set up in their operator maintenance, I will see a limit list of people that can approve. So you can see here, I've got a list of approvers that are available in the system and their sign-off level. So if I wanted to send this to someone that has a higher authority than me, so this project user account only has a sign-off level of $498, can't use them. C. Richmond, $1,000, I could send it to Craig. The asset manager, 1,000. And I also have the option here, look for unlimited. So some of these people may be project directors, senior people within the business that have an unlimited sign-off. So you may want to have a conversation with them and say, hey, I want you to approve this. And you can then reroute it to somebody else. And then that will disappear from your queue and then you'll be down to one. Okay, so that kind of covers off a little bit high level around, functionality that's available on the order approval side. Okay, so I think just the last thing to wrap up on is just around nuances around purchase ordering. So if you were to amend a purchase order, add more value to it, add more quantity after it's been approved, then you would add that on as a new mobilization line to the existing purchase order, but it would go back through the approvals process. So there isn't a way in which people can, what I would class as buck the system, of getting a PO authorized for a specific value and then needing to add things to it would require it to go back through the purchase order approvals workflow, as I've kind of just loosely shown on the demonstration. But and they're the type of financial features that you would want to have in the system to restrict, people being able to order more than what they should be able to. I mentioned the blanket PO and having a budget to hold against a PO. That's another good feature that I would encourage you to use. There will be some standard reporting, but depending on the level that you want to configure purchase order module to, you may want to consider creating yourself some unique reports that actually speak to the things that matter to you and the metrics that you want to be able to display. So things like, if I am using blanket POs, what's my PO number, how many amendments has that purchase order had, what's the value, what was the starting value of that purchase order, what is the balance that I've got left, have I got any negative arrears, if I'm using consignment stock or auto stock replenishment, I want to look at the health of that. My minimum maximum values would be a good one also to have on some kind of report, and preferred vendor health check is also a good metric to use as well. So am I purchasing things outside of my preferred supply chain? Can I report that data back to the vendor to say, hey, I've got an agreement with you for these products, you're turning me down on these and you're telling me you can't supply, so I'm having to go elsewhere, it's costing me more money, and this is the data and the detail I have behind that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it from kind of a high level overview of purchasing. Let Kelly know if you have any additional questions, or if there's any part of it that is not clear or you kind of think might have missed, and we can have another little look through. But hope this information's been valuable, and we'll speak soon. Thanks, everyone.